What's up? Why do so many black men feel good even when they have a degenerate, poverty stricken life? I would say, even in my personal experience and the things that I've seen and the men that I've talked to and the men that I've grew up around and people that I've just seen overall throughout my whole entire life, there more than any other men, there's more black men who their comfort zone is poverty and degeneracy, and they're at this point in life where that's their comfort zone. And in one of my earlier videos that I've talked about, I was saying how a lot of men, they have a very low expectations and people see them as low performers. And so a lot of black men, they have this thing about themselves where they kind of feel okay doing the bare minimum. And they kind of feel good doing the thing that really isn't good for them and not even trying. And there's so many men in my own life, man, so many black men that I've seen where they really don't have anything. They may have kids, you get what I'm saying? They may have things that was a byproduct of them being degenerate and them being um in poverty, and they would just get, those low quality women and stuff like that. But that's kind of, I could go into a different lane with that. But I would say there's so many black men who are degenerate and poverty stricken, and they like it. They like it. You get what I mean? They really like that type of life. And it's not that they don't want a better life, is that they think this is all they can get and this is who they are. They think that's who they are. You know how you see so many men that be like, hey man, I came from the streets, I came from nothing. I was on the block. I ain't even care. Like there's a lot of black men who are like that. And the funny thing is a lot of these men who are like this as a grown man, they didn't grow up like that. A lot of times they had a mother that wanted them to do more. They had things set up in a place where if they really would have just focused and tried, they wouldn't have been in that place. But guess what? They put them place in there. They put themselves in that position. And that's another thing that's growing with black men, is that when we're in high school or when we're in school, you can see there's like a sparkle to a lot of these black boys where they want to be somebody in life. They want to be somebody in life, but when they get older, you see a lot of these black men, they go into the hood, they go into the streets, they start being criminals because that's where they want to find their identity. That's where they think the black man gets his respect and get his kudos and get his, you know, he really gets his respect as a black man. He thinks he gets that from the hood and from the streets and from being a thug. When in reality, we have to shift that, and it's not that the man needs to take away his warrior instinct, because a lot of these men who are thugs and who are criminals and stuff and who are in these gangs and all that, these men aren't weak men. These are not weak men, but these are men who need direction. And I think if these men had direction, because the black community needs people that's willing to protect them. But if you have no direction, you will end up shooting and killing your own brother, you know. And not and I'm not just saying blood brother, but your it could be your blood brother, but just, black people who are supposed to be your people. And this is just something that I see that's very sad. And I think in my life, I was never one of those guys who just fully went into this, oh, I'm gonna act like a thug, I'm gonna act hood and all this type of stuff. I was never one of those guys. I would hang around guys like that. But after a while, you know, I know I couldn't act like how they were acting because it was outside of who I was. Now I had, friends like that, but as I got older, we start growing apart from each other, because once you get a grown man and you're doing that, then that's when you step into, ruining your life and losing your life and, losing your freedom. And that's not something that I want to be a part of. And there's just so many black men that I've seen that do this. A lot of these dudes, probably all throughout their childhood, were never, this hood acting type of guy, this, degenerate acting type of guy. But a lot of them, they want to choose to come from nothing. Because if I had my own choice, I would choose to come from, a silver spoon. I would choose to come from that, especially if I was given every advantage and stuff. And that's just the ideal. Like you would want to have that, but there's so many men who want to come from nothing. They want to recognize with the poverty, with the degenerate. They want to recognize with that. And the thing with the black community is we want to recognize so much of that as our culture. When in reality, that shouldn't be our culture. That was a byproduct of us being oppressed by the white man, right? That was a byproduct of that. And that's why so many of our ways are impoverished, and so much of our thinking as black people are impoverished because we recognize that as culture. And I think that black people are very historical, very black Americans specifically, we have a lot of we're legendary in a lot of ways. But I would say that nowadays in the current year, the current time, the current times now, we have to understand that we have to build up the leadership in the black community, and you start that by building the men. Now, I'm not one of these type of guys who think that a woman is should be over a man. That's just not what I think. I don't believe that. And I think that as an individual in my own life, and I think that as a just a man and being among other men, especially black men, it needs to be very patriarchal, a patriarch, where the man is the leader. Because when you take out the leadership, a lot of the times this is when you see the family structure fall apart, and these young men aren't, they're being more degenerate. They're going into, things that are just, it's continuing to, we're in that constant cycle of just destroying ourselves and destroying the family structure. And I would just say, man, that we have to get away from identifying ourselves with the poor, with the poverty stricken, with the degenerate, because we think that because our oppressor tried to do that to us, and through years and years of us being like that, that's our culture now. When in reality, that's not how it was meant to be, and that's not how it was supposed to be. Because in reality, we were not supposed to have, people doing that to us, but that's going to create resilience. And I feel like our culture needs to be more of resilience, and, the underdog, the person can, who was given less, but still did more than the person that was given more. I think that needs to be more of our culture, not poverty and we're degenerate and we gotta act hood and we gotta act like we ain't come from nothing. We gotta get away from that, because as black men, we have a lot more potential than people put it out there. Because a lot of things that people don't, a lot of things that black men don't understand is that we're really the most hated group, the hated demographic, in my opinion. But also, it's just true. Like, we're really the demographic of people that I would say nobody really cares about. Nobody really cares about. You might have a certain individual who may like you. You might have another individual who may like you, but as a whole, the people don't like you. A lot of times, the a lot of people in the black community won't even like you. But I just want to be a man that can change that narrative. Also, just in my individual life and trying to improve that. But that's pretty much all I have to say. Peace out.